Before we begin, may I remind you that this is the second part of a 3-part video series on the Shrek trilogy. So you should probably watch the first part before watching this one so you have a better idea of what I'm talking about. With that said, let's begin the review. Shrek 2 is even better than the first one, and it's one of the funniest animated movies ever made. And in my ever so humble opinion, it's the only Shrek sequel to ever live up to the unreachable quality of the first movie.
Retro, you have a visitor.
Wow, really? Send him in, officer.
Good afternoon, Retro.
Oh, hi Burnham Watt. Sorry, but I can't talk right now. I'm being forced to review Shrek 2.
That's understandable. But with me today is the £6 I promised you. Now, if you ever want to see that money again, then you simply will let me stay here for as long as I see fit.
Sure, I'd love to have some company. Whenever you're ready, we can continue the review. Movie sequels are bad, is what most people would tell you. To be entirely honest, I completely disagree. Because if a story's universe was interesting to visit the first time, then having another story with the same cast seems like a pretty good idea. Plus, let's not forget that The Terminator 2 is a sequel, and The Terminator 2 is one of the best films of all time. This misconception exists because most sequels made today fall into the same two traps. One of these traps I have decided to call the Force Awakens trap. In these sequels, they just repeat the beats of the previous film, making for a mediocre and often forgettable experience. The other trap I've called the Last Jedi trap, where a film makes such baffling story decisions that it makes the previous films seem worse because of where the story ended up going. Almost every sequel in the past few decades has made the same two mistakes over and over again. And although you might enjoy some of these films, in fact it's completely fine to do so, most people would probably agree they didn't quite live up to the originals. But Shrek 2 doesn't do any of that. It makes satisfying additions to the universe while telling its own unique story. But really think about it, this movie makes such great additions, like Far Far Away for example. It's a location added by this movie that's in every Shrek film after this one. Shrek 2 further explores magic, which for such a large concept is barely touched on in the first movie. Shrek 2 even adds Puss in Boots, who, from this movie onwards, becomes a main character. The point is, time after time, Shrek 2 succeeds at expanding its universe and making great additions to the Shrek lore.
Oh, I can't just stand here and listen to this complete drivel. Are you not even a tidbit embarrassed to be praising Shrek to this extent? For once, let's be honest with ourselves. Nostalgia aside, it's just another atrocious animated comedy in DreamWorks' line of 2000s movie messes.
Wow, I've never heard a sentence be that wrong before. Shrek 2 is much funnier than people give it credit for. Sure, it has some dirty jokes and admittedly quite a lot of pop culture references, but most of the humour comes from the character interactions. This is what some comedians call character-driven humour. Character-driven humour is when two characters are so funny and different from each other that just by listening to them talk, the situation becomes funny. Shrek and Donkey can simply talk to each other, and us, the audience, will find it funny because Shrek and Donkey are so different from each other, and the actors give such a great performance. But regarding the pop culture references, while they're not hilarious by any sense of the imagination, they're alright. They're like a little time capsule of 2004, and that's great. But I think the real reason they work is because the things they chose to parody are relatively timeless. In fact, you can't even say they're dated, because people are still talking about the things they referenced even today.
Well, Retro, what story does Shrek 2 have to tell? Because I can guarantee you that's terrible.
Ha! Wrong again! Shrek 2 has one of the most interesting and emotional stories ever. In fact, it's quite complicated for a children's movie. Compare this to the first movie, which is honestly quite simple. An ogre named Shrek saves a princess to win back his swamp, and along the way, he learns to become a better person and accept who he is. It's simple, yet effective. But Shrek 2 is a lot more elaborate than that. Shrek 2 reveals that Fiona was supposed to be saved by a man called Prince Charming, who's the son of the fairy godmother. The film very subtly implies that she's the one who originally cursed Fiona to be an ogre at night in the first place, so that she could rule far, far away. Now, in the present, Shrek and Fiona have to meet Fiona's parents, which is understandably rather awkward, because Charming was supposed to be Fiona's true love, but Shrek got in the way of that. After being insulted by Fiona's father, Shrek feels that he isn't good enough for Fiona. So, logically, he decides to steal a potion from Fairy Godmother's gigantic factory, and this potion makes him and his true love Fiona into humans. So yeah, very complicated.
Alright, Retro, it's complicated. But so what? The story isn't good enough for me just by being complicated, dumbass.
Well, yeah, but Shrek 2 is great because all this stuff happens so quickly. Shrek 2 has really fast pacing, and that's really great because it keeps the story really fresh. Are you bored of the swamp? Boom, now we're on a carriage. Are you bored of that? Now we're in Far Far Away. Now we're in a forest. Now we're in some factory. Now we're in Far Far Away again. Etc, etc, etc. What I'm trying to say here is that there's no filler in this movie, making for a fantastic viewing experience. Also, Shrek 2 is really good at expanding on Shrek's arc from the previous movie. In Shrek 1, we learn that Shrek is so insecure that he can't even see why anyone else would like him, but he eventually learns to open himself up to others. In Shrek 2, he learns to put the needs of others before his own needs, and by the end of the movie, most people have just accepted Shrek as a normal member of society. Finally, it would be a crime not to mention this, but the finale of the film, where Shrek breaks into the castle, is just a near-perfect scene. Honestly, I wouldn't change a single thing about it. It's so tense, it includes all the characters, and a remix of the song I Need a Hero plays over it. For me at least, it doesn't quite beat the sensational all-star opening of the first film, but it comes very close. But we all know it isn't a Shrek film until we get a Shrek in the Swamp karaoke dance party. And this film certainly ticks that off, it just isn't in the swamp this time. I'm aware that this video has practically devolved into a bunch of bullet points on why Shrek 2 is great, but in my defense, if I was to go into detail about every single thing that Shrek 2 does right, then this video wouldn't be out until 2022 at the earliest.
You know what, Retro? You've convinced me. Shrek 2 is pretty great after all. Wow. Really? No. Good morning and wake up, Retro.
Huh? What? Where am I?
Well, Retro, you are currently located inside the basement of the Dick Ed movie studio. You are to be kept here for as long as I see fit.
What? Why?
Because, Retro, I'm so frightfully unenlightened by working on your videos.
What?
In simpler words, I'm bored of working on your videos, and I'm taking over your channel.
What? Really?
Yes, Retro, I've been planning this all along. Simply kill Kenny, frame you, have you put in jail, and your show becomes mine. What I did not consider is that the judge would want you to review Shrek movies and not want you in jail.
Someone's gonna stop you, you know that?
Well, the funny thing is, I don't suppose they will.
You see, Retro, I've blown up the courthouse, killing many people, so I'm making a teeniest little gamble that no one will care if Retro, a convicted felon and unhygienic commoner, goes missing for a couple months or more. Aw man, this sucks.
Goodbye, Retro.
Burnham, what? Please don't take my show. It's basically all I got left.
Oh, Retro. I know it is. See you later, Retro. Oh, and one more thing. I've decided to pay you that £6.
Wait, seriously?
No.
Damn it, Retro! Answer the phone, you stupid twat! He must be in trouble, and there's only one man I know who can help him now.